So it's a pleasant experience to be here back at Abhayagiri for me. Nice to see some familiar faces. And to see the Sangha doing so well. Real anumodana to Ajahn Jayanto and everyone else, Impersonal, supporting from the rafters, as it were, and the other terrace, and monks, both experienced and inexperienced, the seminaries and the anagarikas and the long-term lay people, and those of you just coming. It takes a whole community to make a community, and it's a rare thing in the world to have one that functions well and over time and in a way that's harmonious enough to stay together and be supportive for practice of the Dhamma. So, real expression of appreciation. For that, of course, we're engaged in the same effort over in New Hampshire, in the aptly named town of Temple, or the Temple in Temple. And as we find ourselves living there and growing over the years, the same sorts of challenges arise as do in any spiritual community, especially those in a very traditional form such as the one we have. And yet I've been very heartened there. There haven't been, well, I'm tempting fate, aren't I? I'm going to touch the wood as I say. There haven't been terrible challenges yet. We've had a very harmonious community and a smooth ride so far. We're about to ask permission from the town for our plan, our sort of master plan, in a few months. So we'll see, maybe that'll be the first huge hurdle. But the hurdles are usually internal. They're usually not so much about planning permission or even about, fires. And Lyme diseases are, you have fires here and we have Lyme disease over there. It's the thing we have to worry about. But those kinds of external challenges, while important to focus on, they're not the real, the true challenges we have, are they? The real difficulties we face communally as a Sangha, but also in each individually, are internal challenges, the challenges of our own mind, our own experience, and our own suffering. And so we have a way of that we've chosen, if we're in a monastery like this, of approaching that and seeking to address what we can. And so we work with we work with the external circumstances that we've chosen. Some of that we don't have much influence over. Some of it we can adjust this way or that. We've got the Vinaya, Patimokkha rules. We've got the routines and sort of ethos that we've inherited from the Thai forest tradition monasteries in Thailand. The way of having a quiet routine where we mix maintenance and work as a mindful practice with solitary time for meditation practice, and also communal meditation like this, in a particular kind of way. So we have those sort of that we've chosen this form, and we therefore inherit certain structures, so-called. And then the environment, of course, the weather, so in California you have fire risks, so you have to do things here that you wouldn't have to do in New Hampshire, at least not yet. And we have other kinds of concerns that we need to incorporate in the practice that we do. Those are all the sort of it's the canvas, the stuff of life that we're using in order to learn. And that learning then, of course, is one which is very personal in a sense, in the sense that it's our own experience. That's what we work with. We use the external circumstances as we must, as a way to support this internal work. And that's true when we're alone, and it's true when we're together. And we have to find, each of us, our own way of doing that that's effective. So we have also a number of exercises and teachings and ways of reflecting, ways of practicing with the mind and body that we've inherited through the tradition, the Theravada tradition, the Pali Canon, the teaching tradition that we've inherited in our own, say, Thai forest and Ajahn Chah tradition, and the way that's come through in the West. And however it's approached at the particular monastery where we happen to reside. Those are also things then that we, in a sense, by choosing this way of practice and this kind of communal life, asking for this training, we're inviting those sorts of aids, those sorts of helpers, to be the things that we try to use. Again, it's part of the tool set that we have to do this work, which is essentially unique and personal. Of course, ultimately, if we are doing this work, we discover that, in fact, it's not as personal as it seems. In fact, what we find is that it's in some ways impersonal. In fact, essentially, completely impersonal. What seems so much about me and my problems, and me and my needs, and me and my hopes and dreams, me and my aspirations, are part of the knot that we're trying to untie. And that once we start to loosen these constrictions and start to uncover the places where we're deluding ourselves, we start to see that which is left when we're free of dukkha in one way or another is not in any way about me and my perceptions, me and my life, me and my feelings and views and opinions and emotions. So that's a wonderful thing to discover. It can be scary at first, but it's very freeing, because it means we don't have to get it. We don't have to get the me part perfect. We don't have to become the perfect person, the perfect monk, the perfect enlightened being in the way that we conceive. We have to know how we're making ourselves suffer and be committed to, in the present moment, being able not to do that, to know how not to do that. And that's something we can only learn through getting it wrong. So being imperfect and also sort of failing while we're trying to do this work is very much sort of a successful, to use that term, it's a kind of, it's what we're supposed to be doing. It's a successful effort. We're supposed to be learning through trying and failing, making mistakes, adjusting, because we use the key element in our practice of mindfulness or awareness. And we through that then, whatever's happening is never wrong if we're able to see it for what it is, from this perspective of knowing. So if we're caught in an emotional mood and we start to get down on ourselves because we realize that we're just, caught up again. We want to be free, we want to be wise and enlightened, and yet here we are, angry because of some petty reason. Somebody, took the last cream cheese bagel or something. And here you are, a monk giving up everything, and you're still getting upset about food. And get down on oneself. But that's not actually something going wrong if we're able to be mindful. These days, mindfulness has made it into the culture in the way that the word yoga has made it into the culture, so you don't really know what's meant anymore. But for us, with Sati Sampajanya, mindfulness it's a word which points to a profound capacity that we all have. Awareness is perhaps even a better word to use, which can be, in a sense, purified. We can, if we choose to commit ourselves to valuing it, relying on it, it starts to get more powerful, deeper, less sullied by our passing moods and thoughts. And in a sense, we can experience, I would suggest, a kind of way of becoming larger than ourselves that we hadn't ever experienced before. Before, we were just mad about the bagel and mad at ourselves for being mad about a bagel. But now, we have a way of seeing that for what it is. It's a bunch of emotional reactions happening right now that have a basis in habits of the past, and are in fact nothing to do, essentially, with me, but just something passing through. And we hear these kinds of teachings and phrases, and if we're here practicing like this, they mean something to us, of course. We believe in them. We maybe have had our own insights along these lines, and yet it can also become a cliche. Something just passing through. Just be mindful of it. Just watch your own mind. And it becomes something which means less and less if we're not careful. If we actually move away from committing ourselves to doing the practice throughout the day, whatever's happening, in the present moment, keeping it going, then it starts to become like a belief system that we adopt. And we believe in mindfulness rather than stay mindful. We believe in seeing feelings as feelings rather than actually doing so. So the way of using this sort of monastic context to deepen the learning process we're here for relies on a commitment to mindfulness. We use the other the practices that we have to help us start to learn about, investigate, and say untie the knots where we are caught in suffering, because just simple mindfulness and awareness generally isn't enough. It's a necessary foundation, and it is the practice in the sense of deepening and deepening and deepening in a way where we will then see ourselves getting caught in ways we wouldn't otherwise. So we need to rely on that at the center, and yet we'll have to also, generally, for most of us, do other things in order to see how it is we're fooling ourselves, where it is we're caught. So we take on practices like not eating after noon, the other, say, austere practices that are involved in the monastic life. And by doing so, we're not sort of rejecting that which we're giving up, but we're doing it in order, one, to simplify life so we don't keep getting stimulated and fascinated and interesting in things that take us away from this central task of continually watching ourselves in the present moment. So to simplify our life, that's one side of it. But the other side, of course, is to intentionally poke ourselves, to start to try to make it difficult, to turn up the volume of intensity so we can start to see where it is our desires go. What do we want? What do we not want? And where does it come? We're seeking, all of us, this is similar to all creatures, beings, want happiness. We don't want unhappiness. We tend to experience that through wanting pleasure and not wanting pain. And so in order to be free of that compulsion and that essential problem that we're caught in, we need to learn about it. So we take on these practices to learn about, in little ways at least at first, although it can feel surprisingly existential sometimes for these tiny little things that we choose to give up. We give up sugar for a month, and it can, it's no problem on the face of it, and yet sometimes we can be surprised by how threatening that can feel or how difficult it is. And that tells us that it's not just actually about sugar, or whatever it is that we're choosing to give up with our renunciatory practices, but it's about something deeper. It's about this fundamental attachment we have to finding security and identity in getting what we want. So we're trying to approach that fundamental problem of seeking security and happiness through getting what we want by consciously picking up these little things, little wants, and creating a container so that we bump up against the side. And that's what the Patimokkha is, of course. It protects us from harmful, unskillful actions by limiting what we can do, what we can't do. But it also challenges us in this way. It gives us a bunch of boundaries that in many ways they're arbitrary boundaries, and some of them are moral boundaries that need to be there, and some of them are, they could be a different way, but they happen to be this way. And yet they are a certain way, and so that when we are following our wants, our desires, our aversions, our moods, our views, our opinions, and we wouldn't otherwise see it, we do, because we bump up against crossing those lines. And we realize, ooh, no, I can't do that. And we see, oh yeah, okay, actually I'm not as wise as I thought I was. I'm not as peaceful as I thought I was. And so we have a chance to learn in the essential way we need to. And we use our minds, we watch our minds, and we use our bodies. We watch our bodies. We have a gift in the, say, monastic life, where a lot of the need to worry about how to provide for ourselves, all of that kind of thing is taken away. We rely on faith. We come with our alms bowl every day, and in a monastery like this, there's a good reason to believe, we all know there's a meal coming. But who knows, maybe one day there won't be. But we come out of faith with the bowl, and there's something to eat. There's roof, at least for a night. If it doesn't burn down tomorrow, it's here today. We have a roof over our head for a night. We have food in our bowl. We have enough medicine to be healthy enough to practice. And we have our robes and the clothes we need in order to not succumb to the elements. So it's a gift that we don't have to think too much more about all these things, and we can use what we have, our bodies and our minds, as the context, the canvas through which we learn. We do this, we make this effort of investigating our experience in the present moment through mindfulness, relying on committing to a quality of awareness which is not moving. It's not getting caught up in where the mind is reaching out to, or moving back with it when it contracts. And hopefully, if we're able to cultivate this quality and this kind of commitment more and more, also not just fall asleep, not just kind of move into delusion. So we cultivate a wakefulness and value it and try to keep it going. And then, sometimes it's time to sweep, sometimes it's time to meditate in the kuti, sometimes it's time to sit through a boring work meeting, sometimes it's time to talk to somebody about something you don't want to. Sometimes it's time to just sit, nothing happening. But whatever's going on, we try to keep this wakefulness going, a sense of watching ourselves as we go through our day. And night, maybe, also. But as long as we're conscious, as soon as we wake up, we reestablish this sense of knowing present moment, body and mind. The body is like this right now. The mind is like this right now. Feels good, maybe? Okay, feels good. This is pleasure. Feels bad, maybe? Okay, feels bad. This is pain. Neutral, fine. It's neutral. We can use the senses as a way to key into this sense of watching ourselves without getting caught into me and my thoughts and my project and my life, by just noticing what is it that I see right now through my eyes. These colors, lots of browns, light, shapes, sounds, my voice, crickets, gurgling stomachs, maybe. I don't hear anyone's stomach gurgling. What we taste, what we smell, we can use the body sensations as a way to establish a sense of watching ourselves in the present moment, and having a bit of distance from the world that we create with our minds. It's very hard to watch our minds at first, isn't it? So we use these exercises in meditation, anapanasati, watching the breath, in meditation as a way to start to both to concentrate and calm down, but also essentially to move out of being part of the thinking mind, to distill awareness away from the movements of thought and perception, views and fantasy, memory, hopes and dreams. All that stuff can still go on, but there's a way of watching while it goes on where we see it for what it is. We're not in the dream anymore. We're seeing, this is the mind dreaming. This is the mind moving. This is the mind fearing. This is the mind hoping. This is the mind at peace. And we stay with that as consistently as we can, as continuously as we can, without worrying too much about the contents. We stay with the context of awareness, and the content tends, the sort of how we feel right now, how our mind is, how our body is, will change. When it gets cold, we feel cold. When we've been meditating, things have been going well, we feel very peaceful, have insights. When things aren't going well for whatever reason, our own karma comes up, or stuff's going on in the community, we're feeling ill, we still watch. It's still moving through. We keep this perspective of staying with the knowing of it. We don't have to make anything out of that. We don't have to conceptualize some kind of new self called the knower, but just as an active commitment, refuge in each and every moment as we continue to experience what we experience, we have this chance to start to let go of that which before we were finding our identity and security in, our ideas of ourselves and the world and how we're doing and all the rest of it, and instead a trust, having saddha, enough faith and trust, confidence to trust the knowing now. And that shows us then where the holding is. Because often we can't. We're still caught. And so then but by doing this practice and committing ourselves to it, we have a chance to see those knots, where we're caught, where we're hooked. And with that perspective then, once it's exposed, there's a chance for it to be seen through and released. When we're in it, there's little to no chance. So we'll use the concentration practices when we have a chance to, quietly in our kutis, doing sitting and walking meditation, or here in the hall, or wherever. Because it does give a sense of clearing out the clutter for a certain amount of time, and also sort of developing the mind's kind of muscles, as sort of a strength of mind that can really help in terms of allowing ourselves to stay in touch with, become familiar with this quality of knowing, awareness that all of us have, which is really what mindfulness means, so that it becomes more and more possible really to keep it going. Not to keep necessarily the mind states going, that we say the concentrated mind state, because sometimes if you're having to clear up wood or have some complicated conversation or do something on the computer, you're just not going to be able to keep that kind of mind state, but you can actually still stay with the knowing. So that's why it's sort of more important to focus on that than it is to focus on the states of mind that we're, say, achieving and experiencing. Our experiences will continue to change, but unless we're able to stay with, find and really make a refuge out of this, say, the mind itself, to use that sort of phrase, or however you want to put it, mindfulness, the puru, this sense of the one who watches. There's no one there, but unless we're able to continually do that in the present moment as a way of letting go of all the rest of it, then we're still on the merry-go-round, aren't we? We're just sort of, experiencing more skillful states while on the merry-go-round. So we have this opportunity all the time. We might not think that we are doing very well, but it doesn't actually matter. That's just a thought right now. I'm not doing very well. That's all it is. And each one of us, anagarika, layperson, monk, monk of many decades, monk of a few months, someone who's just coming to the practice today, we all have equally that same chance to, right now, see that thought for what it is. And that's what it is. It's not about actually becoming anyone solid. It's about the ability right now, again and again and again, consistently, not to get caught by that which hooks us into a false identity, a false sense of who we are, and that all happens through desire. So we're trusting the knowing, to use one of these cliched phrases, whatever kind of language that we need to use, whether it's more in the sort of apophatic tradition or the cataphatic tradition. I know I've lost most of you there, but basically, however we want to describe the practice to ourselves, it's essentially all that is our fingers pointing to the moon. The language around it is functional. It's just something that its value is measured in how it affects us. So if you talk about mindfulness with using words like awareness or consciousness, and that has the effect of allowing us to be to let go of that which we're getting caught in, and to really see through it, and to find this sense of the ground of the mind, as it were, and stay with it, well then good. Or if you need to use another way of talking about it, that avoids certain words, it doesn't matter, that's fine too. But what we're doing is trying to understand how we are getting deluded continually through habit in each and every moment, and stop doing that. And that's an opportunity we have in each and every moment. The apophatic, that word is used in the sort of long time ago, I think, in the Catholic tradition, of the sort of way of negation, the via negativa, so describing the path in negative terms. In other words, not saying what it is, but saying what it's not. It's not this, it's not that. And moving towards a realization which is cannot be put into words, is essentially ineffable, unspeakable, by saying, it's something which it cannot be defined. And the cataphatic tradition is one where it names the steps and says, okay, it's this step 1, and then it's this step 2, and then you get to step 3, and then in the end, this is what it is, and gives a name to it. At least that's my personal use of those terms. It's probably not accurate. But over the years I've seen the different practitioners, different monks have ways of approaching this path. Some are more benefit more by by speaking about it, or hearing teachings that use phrases and terms, ways of talking about the path in a certain way, and others in a different way. There's these two different ways of kind of two different sides of really talking about it in ways that you're not defining it. You're pointing at the things that you can name are not it, and the other side is that you want to actually say no, it's this, and so you want to first get to this place, and then after you've done that, then you get to this place. Maybe that'll work better for certain people, and if that's the case, well then we use the Buddha's words that have worked for so many people over the years: the Eightfold Path, 7 Factors of Enlightenment, the different Pali terms that we can study and find practical meaning in our experience through doing so, and we construct a path, a traditional way of approaching our practice that's supportive, as long as it's actually having the effect, the practical effect of leading to letting go, to release, to relinquishment, to freedom. So we try to find for ourselves what's going to be helpful, and then we use the stuff of our life. So in the monastery, it's the monastic life, the rules and routines and defined relationships and all of it, as the context, the sort of, or rather the sort of the canvas, it's just the environment that we're using to do something which essentially is always available to us, and you cannot put into words, and it's so simple. It's easy to miss. You're staying wakeful, watching ourselves as we move through our experience. So we see the mind move, where other times if we weren't doing that, we wouldn't. We would simply move with the mind. We see that we can move back from our own the roller coaster of the wanting, not wanting, wanting, not wanting mind, and find a point of equanimity even as we're moving through, active life, quiet life, pleasant life, unpleasant life. Say a clear mind state and a cloudy mind state, an expanded mind state and a contracted mind state. There's a point of equanimity which is available always to us, any of us, no matter how long we've practiced, but if we find it, we commit ourselves to staying with. And then in this moment, we see things to the extent we can for what they are. This is a contracted mind. This is suffering. This is freedom from suffering. This is the body. All right? This is heat. This is sound. This is the mind moving because of sound. So today there was some kind of motorcycle thing, I guess. Some sort of, or maybe it's always like this at Abhayagiri, but it seemed like there was some kind of event. Motorcycle after motorcycle after motorcycle. Right? And so we can make ourselves suffer with that if we have an idea of like, well, no, it shouldn't be like that. This should be a quiet afternoon at Abhayagiri. It's just a sound, actually. It's not painful at all. But if there's pain, then that's our mind moving because of the sound. We're caught in our own comparisons and ideals, expectations. And that's a wonderful thing to see, because that's the learning we need to do. Those are the kind of knots that we are always caught in. And so we use that. If we're practicing well, it's not a problem that the motorcycles are coming. It's actually a gift. We can see, can we sit here quietly meditating and totally not suffer with these sounds of the motorcycles? Like Chinese water torture, you never know when it's coming. And there's another one, just free, clear, no movement. Or am I, Am I suffering in some way? Say it shouldn't be like this. Then you get to see that and how it happens, and that's what we need to see. We need to do things to poke ourselves in different ways so that we actually do see how it is that we create our own suffering. So we're not trying to create a simple life for ourselves here, which is always going to be pleasant, because if we do that, we won't learn. The stuff of the, say, the routines and the necessities that we've created for ourselves of our own lives here, say in our communal traditions, in this at Abhayagiri, in our monasteries, where we have a lot of things to do. There's a work period in the morning and so on. And we can easily think, well, look, we could do it differently. We could all be just hermits on the mountain. Why do we have to do all this stuff together? Why do we have to do all this group practice? Some people love group practice. A lot of people don't like group practice. And yet here it is. Okay, now we have to practice together. I could do so much better in my meditation just continuing up in my kuti. Now I have to go all the way down and do this yo-so. Why? And we can make ourselves suffer with these things. But it's just like the motorcycles, in fact. There's nothing there. It's just the body moving again down instead of sitting still. There's some different sounds, right? Different needs of what we have to do, but that's it. The suffering comes from us. So it's good that things are not the way they should be, that things are not the way we want them to be. That's what we're actually seeking for when we ask for the training. We're asking for things to not be the way we want. It's actually good that we have to live with people, some of whom we would never choose to live with otherwise. That's what you just kind of would get poked in different ways. We would never get, poked. And so we see our mind. Can we be peaceful? Even with, such an eccentric person. Can we be peaceful with, having to do this thing I just don't see the point of? Right? It's not about the thing, what we can do or not do. It's about, can we learn how to be peaceful with things as they are, actually, in the present moment, just right now, again and again, always. So we stay wakeful, and that's enough. It's not enough, but it is enough. It's enough in the sense that if we're able to do it, that's where the letting go can happen. And it's not enough in the sense that generally when we're approaching this, trying to cultivate this ability, we need to challenge ourselves in different ways. So we adopt certain different practices. Concentration practices, metta practice, austerity practices, as ways, again, to just try to see how it is do I make myself suffer with things as they are. How do I get tied into knots? Where do I get hooked? And ultimately, it's about this I, isn't it? It's about me who's making this big effort. That's the wonderful thing too, because we realize that no, I don't have to be this one that I'm trying to fix. I can leave it broken. And as long as I'm not crossing the line into speaking or acting, and eventually thinking, from kilesa, from a sense of greed, hatred, or delusion, and all its various expressions, as long as I'm not making karma from there, it doesn't matter. I can be completely flawed in every other way, and I don't have to worry about it. Total freedom is possible now by being able to see that for what it is, as it is, and not identify, get caught into, cling to it. Then there's not much to do. We have this lovely sort of routine where sometimes we're junior when we come in, and we, over the years you become more senior, given more responsibility, different roles, different relationships. It's actually not personal. We do this work which is intensely personal in one way, because we have to do it. No one's going to do it for us, or can do, and it's going to be unique to each of us. We have different karma. And in a very real way, it's impersonal. We're able to just, be bodies moving through life be minds, moving as they do with their own, our own. They have their conditions, causes and conditions for being the way they are. And then there's what we take for our refuge, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the sense of knowing is the way, that phrase, to use that phrase, a way of pointing apophatically to something you can't actually define. It's nothing you can kind of speak or put into words, even conceive. It's only something that can be apprehended in reality. It's nothing to do with believing anything. It's just something to be known for oneself, always now. And that's something, we all have all we need for that. We always all have all we need for that. You don't have to change much. Do our best with the externals. So those are a few words this evening for encouragement. 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 Encouragement.